Well, what's going on, guys? It's a long time, it feels like, since we have been live with the Rebel Walk after Omaha kind of calmed down there for a little while and everything has kind of come to an end. We are ready for football season, and it is almost go time. And today was kind of the official kickoff, you may say, of SEC football, as SEC Media Days was or started today, and it will go for several more days this week down in Atlanta. I was not able to make it in person myself. The Omaha trip kind of wiped me out. That was kind of my last big trip before a surgery that I have coming up. But Evie is down in Atlanta, and she will be joining shortly. And this will be my first time to be on a show with her. And I'm very excited to have Evie joining the show here on the Rebel Walk Live. As you can see, we are also thrilled to be once again sponsored by our good friend Lee McPherson and the McPherson team of Remax of Orange Beach. You can check her out at leemcpherson.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Lee at the Beach. You guys all know her. She follows the Rebel Walk. She's a big supporter of the Rebel Walk. She's a big supporter of Ole Miss athletics, and she can help you with any home buying, home selling, or any other needs, realtor needs that you may have in that area. Lee and her team can help you, so be sure and go find her at leemcpherson.com and find her on Twitter at Lee at the Beach. That's Lee McPherson of Remax of Orange Beach and the Lee McPherson team. Now, Evie will be jumping on here momentarily, and I'm going to let her take it away when it comes to the first day of SEC Media Days. Of course, Commissioner Greg Sankey started it off, as he always does, and my goodness, did he have some very pointed remarks today, as did Lane Kiffin. And Evie was there for all of it. Of course, I myself was watching on the SEC Network, as I'm sure some of you were as well. Greg Sankey, no ifs, ands, or buts about the SEC being the super conference that it is. And he had a lot of good things to say about the SEC. He had things to say about college football playoff expansion. And NIL was obviously a big discussion today with all of the coaches and with Commissioner Sankey. Lane Kiffin had some very pointed remarks about the NIL situation as it stands, particularly as it pertains to head coaches and booster interaction with recruiting in particular. That's the one that he really had a lot to say about. Now, of course, if you can go back to the days of the Pony Express, or as it became known, Pony Excess, back in the SMU glory days, of where booster involvement was a big thing. And that's what caused the NCAA to institute what is now known as the death penalty in college football. And it was never thought there for a long time that paying recruits was going to be a legal thing to do, and that booster involvement was going to be even a remotely legal thing to do. But now, obviously, with NIL being a big thing as it is, then you will see a lot more booster involvement, or you have seen a lot more booster involvement to this point. Now, I am thrilled to be joined for the very first time on a Rebel Walk live show by the founder of the Rebel Walk, the boss lady, the one that we all have to do all this for, and we love every second of it because she is absolutely incredible. You guys all know her. Evie, it is so good to have you on one of these shows at long last.
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I'm excited to be here, and I apologize for not having video. Have you ever heard the one about a bunch of media people descending upon a hotel that has really crummy Wi-Fi? Well, that would be 2022 SEC Media Days. So the Wi-Fi here is not so great.
Yeah, and you would think with it being SEC Media Days, they would be cognizant of the fact that there's going to be a lot of media there, and there's going to be a lot of things that need Wi-Fi. But, I guess you can't have everything perfect, even though you are the SEC. Evie, it's not that any of us wouldn't love seeing Evie on the broadcast. It's just a little bit harder to do video than it is audio, so y'all bear with her on that. But Evie, we can hear you loud and clear for now. So you were there, of course, you are there, I should say, in Atlanta. You heard everything in person today that Commissioner Sankey had to say, that Lane and the other coaches that spoke today had to say, and of course, you got to be in the private media session with Lane Kiffin, with the rest of the media from Ole Miss. So, Evie, I'm just going to let you take it away and kind of talk about the day, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Well, it's funny. I'm always excited to come to SEC Media Days. I know there are those out there that think maybe the media isn't excited about it, but I am, and I am because it means we're that much closer to football season starting. So that's exciting for me. It's funny. I've been to a whole bunch of these. I think this might be my ninth one, maybe ninth straight one. And it never fails to make me smile when I see the players and how excited they are and how seriously they take it and how much it means to them to get to be here. So we had Cedric Johnson and Jonathan Mingo and Nick Broker here representing Ole Miss, along with Coach Kiffin, of course. And we began our day. Well, we got to hear Coach Sankey make his opening comments, but then we had a little private breakout session with local Ole Miss beat writers with Coach Kiffin in one of the meeting rooms of the hotel. So that was nice to kind of get a little one-on-one with him before he went into the main stage of the College Football Hall of Fame. And, Lane looks good. He looks rested. He looks tan. I think that, he had a lot of interesting things to say. Of course, he talked a lot about, he was asked a lot about NIL and such. And the players, we got to have at the end of the day a private breakout session with them. And, everybody's really optimistic about the season and really looking forward to it.
Well, as you mentioned, Lane did look good. He looked dapper wearing his Dead Soxy socks. He had the sneaker game going strong. Everything working well for Lane, fashion-wise, as always. And, of course, it wouldn't be a Lane Kiffin press conference if the first question he got asked had to do with Nick Saban. So, of course, that's kind of how the press conference was. I'm pretty sure we heard Lane Kiffin have to answer questions about 3 different head coaches that weren't him, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a typical Lane Kiffin day.
Yes, it is, and you're absolutely right. He started out, I think the very first question, as you alluded to, somebody asked him about, trick plays and Nick Saban, and he said, Kirby Smart always said, you get up here and it's like all about Saban and Bama, and sure enough, my first question is about Nick Saban. So anyway, I think that's funny. I think, it's funny. I overheard and I probably shouldn't even say this, but I overheard a media person for another school make a comment to the fellow that was sitting next to him that, what is it like for the Ole Miss beat writers covering Lane Kiffin? Because, he doesn't seem like he's very happy. And I'm like, no, he seems like he's fine to me. He's just Lane. And what I actually said to him is, it's after having covered a lot of really happy Ole Miss coaches, it's so refreshing to me that Lane says what he means and means what he says. He's not, he doesn't hem and haw around or say anything that leaves you wondering what he means, and he doesn't try to avoid controversial things. So I find that very, very refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. Lane Kiffin is not a political coach. And by political, I mean he doesn't give you a bunch of coach speak nonsense that you hear every other coach in college football say. He says exactly what is on his mind. He says exactly what he thinks about whatever situation that he's asked about. And he doesn't really care what you think about it. He doesn't. And he's monotone. That doesn't mean he's not happy. He's just all business. This is SEC Media Days. This is a business trip for him. This is the real start of college football season for him is started today. He's the media scrums now, getting ready for games starting here in a month or two. all those things are adding up for Lane. And I love that about Lane, that he will tell you exactly what is on his mind and exactly what he thinks. And he said a lot of very pointed things today, particularly about NIL.
Boy, he really did. And it was interesting. We've got an article up on our website at therebelwalk.com right now talking about, his concerns and comments that he made on NIL. And it's just further echoing things, I guess, that he said throughout, the last year since this all happened. And, he talked about the coach's role in an NIL world, and he talked about capping, payments where you end up with just basically separate levels of schools. And I just think that, he talked about boosters and if you have boosters out there deciding who they're going to pay to come play, which not that that's what's happening, because that's not how it works. That's illegal, I think. But you have boosters who pick who they want. They pay them however much. The school, the coach doesn't have anything to do with it. So then, as Lane said, are the boosters going to tell you who to play to? When their person doesn't play, how is that going to work out? And personally, it came across my mind at that moment when he said that I pity the booster who walks in and tries to tell Lane Kiffin who to play, because that is not going to end well. I think maybe in the past we might have had coaches that might have been, I don't know if susceptible is the right word, but that would be, more amenable. And I just think that, as I'm sure you'll agree, that isn't happening with Lane.
Yeah, not at all. And not a lot of coaches in the SEC in particular are going to just let somebody walk up in there and tell them who to play and when to play, and particularly the top tier coaches. Heaven forbid you do try to tell Nick Saban who to play. That's not going to go well for you. But yeah, I thought that was the biggest quote I took from him as well, is booster involvement, but without head coach involvement. How is that going to work? And that is a big thing. Right before you came on, I was talking about, if you back in the SMU glory days of the Pony Excess, as it became to be known, you had booster involvement like you'd never seen. And that's what led to the death penalty being instilled by the NCAA. Now, I don't think you'll ever see that again, just because of how much harm it did to SMU's football program. But now you're seeing it kind of all over again, but public, because they know they can get away with it. And Lane, there's a lot of people that will say, well, it's easy. Lane, of course, Lane's going to say that, but he's going to use it just like everybody else. Well, yeah, he is, because you can't succeed if you don't. But at the same time, there are still different tiers of NIL ability. And you take your Alabamas and your Georgias of the world, and you take what they have in money. And even another SEC school like Ole Miss doesn't have the same kind of capabilities. And that's what Lane is saying. You've got to reel that in, because it's so out of hand, and there is still no even playing field.
Absolutely. And, it was funny. Somebody asked him today, I'm sure you heard it, what have you found that works with NIL and what doesn't work? And Lane said, the first question, keys to NIL and how you do well with it, is you have really good boosters. That's how you do well at it. And then he basically said, I'm going to say what other people probably won't say, but it's absolutely, and then he compared it, he basically said it's like a payroll in baseball. What teams win over a long period of time? The teams that have high payrolls and can pay players a lot. And but anyway, I just thought it was funny that he said that you have really good boosters. That's what you do. And so yeah, that was interesting. And when you talk about SEC coaches just a few minutes ago, it made me laugh. We had in the little private session with him, somebody asked him about, the coaches, do they work with each other, or, when somebody new comes into the league, like a Brian Kelly, do they kind of try and welcome them and help them? And he just looked at him and laughed and said, no, this is the SEC. There's no welcoming committee. There's nobody trying to help anybody. And any first year coach here in the league, that would not happen. So I thought that was pretty funny.
And why would you try to help that weirdo anyway?
Why? Yeah, I had
was it just me, or was he the most stiff, awkward? I mean, Brian Kelly does not fit in the SEC. I'm just going to say it. That he does not belong there. Like he is so completely different than everybody else in the SEC. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't
I
say that,
mean,
but it
no.
just doesn't fit.
I understand what you're saying, and I think first of all, I mean, this is nothing against him, but I didn't realize he was so short. He was a lot shorter than what I thought he was. But I think yeah. I mean, he probably. I think he's a great coach. I think he's going to do probably from all accounts from my LSU media friends and such. He's doing a great job there. But you're right. He just as of right now, he just doesn't quite seem the same. Which of these is different from the others? I don't know, kind of thing. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he does. He did say he didn't. Somebody asked him about his Southern dialect, which I almost died laughing when they did after he, said family such a weird way that time after he got introduced as a head coach. And really the only thing he said was crawfish etouffee, and he said it the right way. So I don't know, I mean, there really wasn't a lot of accent involved in that, but he did get that right. So
Well, he didn't say etouffee, so that's good.
no,
He's off
he
to a decent
didn't.
start.
Yes.
Well, Evie, now I obviously, and I'm sure you may want to. I don't know if you want to speak to anything the commissioner said either. Obviously, he had a lot of very pointed things to say about the SEC and how much of a power in college football in general it is. But
Yes.
also anything that stood out to you in the private session that none of us got to hear that you particularly wanted to talk about when it comes to Ole Miss football in particular.
Well, first off to Sankey, um, it was so hilarious. Somebody asked him if the addition of OU and Texas trumped the Big Ten's addition of USC and UCLA, and his immediate answer was yes. So I just thought that was hilarious. And then of course he said, you got to be careful using the word Trump these days. He did say that, so he got some laughter there too. But yeah, he made no bones about it. And to me, the phrase that kept going through my mind while Sankey was up there talking was just like a boss. I mean, I just feel like Sankey is the boss, and if he's not the next or the initial college football czar, if and when we finally have that, then I don't know who would be. But yeah, he is. I think he's forward thinking. He's anticipated a lot of things that maybe other leagues have not. He actually said, this is a direct quote on the SEC: "We know who we are. We are confident in our collective strength." He's not worried about what the Big Ten or the Pac-12 or anybody else is doing. He just seems like he's a dude who's pretty confident in our league. He even said there's no sense of urgency in our league, no panic in reaction to others' decision. We know who we are. So I kind of thought that he was, here's looking at you, Big Ten. So
yeah.
Anyway.
And why wouldn't he be confident? The
Yeah.
SEC is the powerhouse football. You cannot make an argument there is another conference as good as the SEC in football. You just can't.
Right, absolutely. And in terms of our little breakout sessions with Kiffin and the players, I think that the players, one thing that struck me, I got to visit with Cedric Johnson for a little while, and I just point blank asked him, we've lost Sam Williams and Chance Campbell and some other really strong defensive players, Mark Robinson, are we still going to see an attacking land shark defense? And he assured me, he in fact gave me his word that we're going to see an attacking land shark defense. So I was happy about that. And, we talked, it was really kind of sweet. I asked him, he's talked to Sam Williams a few times since Sam has been in Dallas, drafted by the Cowboys. And I said, Cedric, has it hit you? That was your really good friend and teammate, and that could be you sooner rather than later. And he said yes, and it's very, very motivating to him. He said Big Sam told him he's looking for him to break his single season sack record this year. So anyway, it was just really nice to have a chance to get to talk to Cedric. I hadn't really talked much to him before.
Well, I'm glad you said that too, because and I cannot remember which of the SEC analysts it was when I was watching it at work today, but they would not stop harping on how bad Ole Miss's defense used to be. And even though it was improved this past year, we've still got to worry about Ole Miss's run defense. It's like, dude, we get it. Okay. Well, we all know that Ole Miss's defense was not their strong point and hasn't been their strong point in recent years, but they were remarkably better last year. I mean, ridiculously so. So I'm glad to see the confidence that guys like Cedric have, particularly with losing a guy like Sam and some of the others that they have lost. Because I mean, obviously all the focus on Lane Kiffin teams is offense, but I think the defense could be somewhat underrated because Lane Kiffin is way too savvy of a coach to be what Hugh Freeze was, which was 5 offensive plays with Phil Longo, and that's all he ever cared about. And who cares about defense? Just score 60 points a game, you know.
And as my friend Emily Holly got very frustrated, and I think once even messaged Coach Freeze about the bubble screens, this drove her crazy. But yeah, you're right. And to your point about the defense, I mean, last season our defense gave up 13.6 fewer points per game than they had the year before. I mean, 2 touchdowns basically. So, you know, it's a little frustrating to think of SEC analysts or whatever they are commenting on the Ole Miss defense. And I think they had a chip on their shoulder last year. I think they'll have a chip on their shoulder this year. They were asked, Cedric was asked about having Coach Partridge after losing DJ Durkin to A&M and adding Maurice Crum. And he said he actually thinks they have a little more freedom in kind of what the scheme and such that they're doing. But, you know, those analysts just kind of make me crazy and shake my head sometimes.
Yeah, but that's kind of their job too. You know what
right.
Do. Hey, and for your friend there, you got to be careful messaging Hugh. He might send you back.
Well, I know that.
Okay, this isn't a Hugh Free Smack Talk show. Okay, we're done. All right, this is just funny jokes. Okay, Hugh, it's a joke. All right. Anyway, but I am glad you got to meet with some of the players. I really like what Nick Broker. Look at me pronouncing it like a daggum financial wizard. But it is I like that he's there. I really think his leadership is going to be a key piece of this team this year. He doesn't get a lot of the talk around this Ole Miss team, but he's been there. He's been involved with this team now for several years. I really like that he was there. I think that Lane brought him for a reason because he's one of the big guys. They don't get talked about a lot unless you're Sam Williams and guys like that who are impact players, so to speak. I really like that he brought Nick with him to media days, and I like the focus that Nick is getting.
I do too, and had a chance to visit with him today. And what's interesting is if you think about it, with 2 new young guys at quarterback, and new guys all over the field, new running back staff, different receivers. I think Mingo and Dennis Jackson are the main returning ones, but we have a lot of new guys. The offensive line is where our experience lies now. And, I think Nick takes a lot of pride in that. And I think that he feels like they're going to be leaders this season. And one funny thing he did say was, somebody asked him about his move from tackle to guard. And he said that basically at the next level, they liked everything about him, but they felt like his arms were too short for tackle. And he said, there's really not much he can do about that. So, so he's moving. The move to guard will suit him a little better at the next level, and obviously showcase his versatility. But I just thought that was funny because here's this huge behemoth of a guy, and there's really not a lot on him. I would think was too small. His arms look plenty long enough to me, but I'm not an NFL scout. But anyway, it it was really, good. And of course, every media person who interviewed every Ole Miss player tried to get them to say something about the quarterback situation. And of course, these guys are smart. They're not falling for that. They're saying all what you would expect, that they're both working hard. And Mingo did bring up, he has only had Matt Corral as his quarterback for 3 years. So this is going to be a big change, for him. And I think Mingo obviously will be a leader there in that wide receiver room. But definitely, I think also according to Broker, it's Mason Brooks has been a big addition to the team on the offensive line. They seem really pleased with what he's doing, and so it's gonna be fun to watch, because that should be a pretty strong offensive line.
Well, and that's a key because of who is behind them. Obviously, no more heralded on the running back room than Zach Evans when he came in. And I'm curious what I know. Obviously, like you said, the bait questions are all about the quarterback battle. None of these guys are dumb enough to answer that question. They're not going to fall down that trap. I'm sure Lane and the rest of the coaching staff has educated them very well on what to say when they are asked about that kind of stuff, and whoever the public relations people are with the football team as far as getting them educated for the media. And that's just part of it. That's part of being in the media. You understand you're not going to get a straight answer to that question, but you got to ask it. So you're going to ask it, and that's just how it goes. But I am curious if Lane or any of the rest of them, and particularly the offensive line guys, about the running back group, because we lost Snoop Connor, and you lose Jerry and Ely, and you lose those guys. But then you've got a pretty daggum good running back room this year, and none more important than the transfer from TCU, Zach Evans, of course, originally an Ole Miss commit, and then did not end up coming to Ole Miss, and now he has finally made his way to Oxford. And you get a good offensive line and a good running back like him, and all of a sudden you're looking at a very two-dimensional Ole Miss offense as opposed to a more pass-heavy offense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, what Broker did tell us about the returning linemen, all the experience they have, returning 4 starters. And when he talked about Mason, he said he fits in like a glove with us. He's meshed really well. And I think that from what, he's seen, he talked about the running backs, and was asked what does he see blocking for these guys, and he's just really, I think, impressed with for example, I think with Evans, with his speed and his power. I think that it's going to be a huge, like you say, it's a huge part of any Lane Kiffin offense. And, wow, how nice to be Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley the fourth and Quinshawn Judkins and have an offensive line with 4 returning starters and a very experienced transfer. So I think the running game is going to be so fun to watch this season. I can hardly wait.
Yeah, and that offensive line again was somewhat of a problem to an extent last year. Of course, that's kind of what the issue they had in the Sugar Bowl. And Matt got hurt very early because there were some pretty gaping holes for that Baylor defense. So it's definitely going to be nice for the offensive line to have this experience coming back now, and the implementation now of Lane Kiffin knowing how to fix those issues that he saw last year. Because if it's one thing we saw Lane do every week last year, it was always find something to say that his team did not do great in the game. And that's something we're not used to with Ole Miss. We really aren't. You're used to seeing that from Saban, like, well, we sucked all game long, even though we won by 60. That's what we're used to seeing Nick Saban. We're not used to seeing that at Ole Miss. And I love that about Lane, is that he's not just all candy and rainbows. He's not like, yeah, we were, we did great the whole time, and then forget about all the gaping problems that were in the game. And so I think that's a big deal when it comes to this offensive line in particular, because he knew there was room for improvement in the O-line, and now he's got a lot of production back this year that he can work with.
I think so. And it's funny you say that because I can't remember if it was whether it was one of the Alabama games where, he said, we're not, we don't care about moral victories here. And he meant it. I mean, he absolutely, there was no patting yourself on the back for being in a close game. And, even to your point, I heard when he was asked, and you probably heard it too, about, you're already 2-0 against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, looking at possibly being 3-0 this year. And he said, we have a lot of games to play before we even begin to think about, that Egg Bowl. And so I thought that was interesting. But, to your point, after the Arkansas game last year, the 52-51 extravaganza, I guess, we're happy we won 52-51. And he went in the locker room and got very frustrated with some defensive coaches who were celebrating. Maybe a defensive coach, maybe who's not here anymore, I don't know, but got very frustrated and was mad, and was screaming and yelling because basically, do you think Nick Saban would be celebrating if he won a game where his defense gave up 51 points? I don't think so. So Lane is very much cut from the same cloth, and he brought up again, I think it's sticking in his craw, the Baylor game and the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
And he said, even with Matt in there, we didn't do so well offensively. And he said it was basically they out schemed us. Their defense was playing very well, but they were ready for everything we did. And he still doesn't like that. So he doesn't sugarcoat things. And that's really nice to see. And it's really what the players need to hear, to be honest.
Well, and it shows the maturity of Lane Kiffin from what he was to what he is now. Lane Kiffin is not the butt. You can't make him the butt of the joke anymore. Yeah,
no.
There was a palpable tension between him and Paul Feinbaum today. Like you could have cut it with a knife when Kiffin was on. I guess I don't know if it was on Feinbaum's show or if it was on with the analysts. I can't remember. Either way, I mean, Kiffin knows what Feinbaum has said about him in the past. He has not forgotten about it. And Lane Kiffin understands where he is now and the job he's got to do now. And I think Ole Miss is so lucky that we got Lane Kiffin when we did, because this Lane Kiffin is so far removed from left on the tarmac Lane Kiffin. It's unbelievable the difference in the Lane Kiffin that we see today.
It is. And, I say this often to people when they ask me about Kiffin. I think Kiffin is way smarter also than a lot of people give him credit for, or in the past may have given him credit for, and outside of football, not just football, but outside of football. And, he has matured a lot. And I think he's very intentional about what he says and what he does. And it's, again, I hate to keep using the word refreshing, but it really is refreshing to me. And, like kind of the little exchange when he talked about today, one of my favorite moments was when, he's not wearing a tie. And he said, Commissioner Sankey said, I wish I wasn't wearing a tie, or I wish I didn't have to wear a tie. And he said, I just told him, you don't have to wear a tie. And he said, we don't have to do things one way just because they've always been done that way. And so I'm not wearing a tie. And then later, he talked about it was in terms of, somebody asked him about recruits and coming in and, taking pictures with limousines and such. And he said, you do things differently. You do what works. You do what works, especially here, in a place like Ole Miss. And he said, we don't think outside the box. We create a new box. And I thought, bam, that's just brilliant, because that, I think, is what he's so good at, whether it is being the master of the portal or being kind of ahead of the game. He anticipated a lot of these NIL issues and was willing to speak out on them a year ago. And so I think that he's always, some people may say, that Lane Kiffin is playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers. And, I really think to some extent that is true. But one thing I did want to say, because I thought it was really, really interesting, in the little private session we had with him, he talked about. He was asked about the article where he talked about potentially staying at a school, staying at Ole Miss longer than, what people might have thought. And he just said, it's a great place to go. It's a great place you can go and stay and not jump around. And he said, when asked what makes Ole Miss football special for him, he just said the football is superior and you see the fans' excitement. And he is truly excited about the fans' excitement. And so I could be wrong. Anything could happen. But Lane seems pretty happy where he is. And he did mention to us that his daughter Landry has now transferred, I guess would be the word, but she's going to be going to Oxford High School this year. So she's now moved to Oxford, and doesn't sound like anybody's fixing to leave to me.
Well, I'm just saying, I had said I have had so many people come up to me and say, "Oh, Lane's leaving in a year or two." I'm like, if he's just going to he's waiting out the Alabama job. I'm like, no. If Lane's going to go anywhere, I think it would be to give the NFL a try again. I think Lane has gotten past that point of his career, so I think that's awesome. I love that little tidbit there about the Landry. It's like, just saying, that's not somebody that. Typically you're not going to uproot your kids if you're not going to be here very long. So, sorry, go ahead, Evie.
No, I was just going to say, right. And I think that, everything with his parents are here. And I don't mean to turn this into trying to convince people he's going to stay. I think that if and when the day comes that Lane Kiffin leaves, and I hope it's many years in the future, obviously in just his first few years, he's leaving it better than he found it. And I think that there's just, again, nobody better, in my opinion. I don't know who it would be, navigating NIL and transfer portal and, all those kind of things that are coming up. I just feel like Lane is sharp as a tack. He really is. And I'm glad he's the coach, as I'm sure fans are also.
Well, and on that fans note, by the way, what Lane said about being excited about the fans, cheer on more downs than just third down, dang it. I've been saying that for so long. Let's give him something to be excited about. I can't stand going to an Ole Miss football game and it's just dead silence until it's third down. Like, let's cheer every down like they do with the elite programs, as they say. I hope that he brings that excitement in all seriousness. I really hope that this fan base becomes one of these that you see on TV that is just loud and noisy the entire game, like in Alabama, like in Auburn, like those atmospheres of the 70, 80, 90, even over the 100,000. Those are the atmospheres that people love watching on TV, and I think Lane is bringing that to Oxford. I know Keith Carter is trying to bring that to Oxford with the Champions Now stuff, even though the money has taken a little bit of a hit here lately. That's just how it is right now across the country. That's nothing to be super concerned about. I think there's a lot being done to make Ole Miss a real elite program in college football. And that's something that if you just a few years ago, you could not have said without getting laughed out of the room.
Absolutely. And, I think just the value, a pure dollar value on the positive publicity, the recognition of Kiffin, his social media game is second to none. In fact, I think we tweeted a few days ago that account that keeps track of the social media interactions of the college football head coaches, and Lane is again number one, and it wasn't even close. I don't remember who number two was, but he was way far behind. And so, just there is an economic value to having a head coach that any word he utters is out there, in the media. And I think recruits really see that. Several of the current players were asked about him. I think Mingo talked about I guess it was Nick Broger talked about his swagger, and that's what he brings. He brings a swagger to the game. And so I think that what he's done for the program is just outstanding. And when you talk about, cheering on more than just third down, Kiffin also is very realistic He tells fans, you need to come to games. Recruits see that. Recruits see when a stadium is empty or full or, whatever. But he also is of the mentality. He's very pragmatic, I think. And it is, let's put a really good product out there on the field. I think if you're 2-10, I think being Lane would probably say it is what it is. And, he might not would want to watch that either. So I think the better they get, and obviously a record 10-win season for the first time in the regular season in Ole Miss school history is something else. But yeah, absolutely. There's definitely room for improvement. But my goodness, look how far we've come in 3 years.
Yeah, it's been a night and day difference, and I'm really looking forward to this season. I mean, I think there is a very realistic chance that we can have another great year if everybody stays healthy. And obviously injuries is always something you can't really take into account because you don't know, but you certainly hope everybody stays healthy. And with the quarterback situation, regardless of who it is, I know Luke is ready to play. I know Jackson's there. He's competing. There's another great quarterback room. The running back room is solid. Wide receiver room is solid, especially Mingo. If he can stay healthy this season, will be a leader, as you said. Evie, I know you have a lot of work to do as you are covering media days for the Rebel Walk with some authority down there. And I'm really glad that you were there and able to make the trip down there. And thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy night to come on. It's been awesome having you on the program to talk about the SEC Media Days. And I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for letting me come on, because this is
letting you come on. Well, no, you're the boss.
No, this is your baby. But I really and truly, like I say, I'm excited. I'm very positive about the direction of the program. The players are just, they're good kids, and each single one of them, all three of them today, talked about, as did Kiffin, kind of bringing the new, having so many transfers in, and how does that affect the culture of the program? And each player talked about, helping the new guys, not just on the field, but helping them off the field and understanding the culture of the program, because they want to keep that going. So I thought that was meaningful also.
Well, it was a great first day. It's kind of weird, like Ole Miss is already done, I guess. Technically, with the big part of media days, Lane gave his big, press conference and everything. So I know, but there's a lot more going on down there this week. There's going to be a lot more content and a lot more interesting takes, I'm sure, all throughout the week. One quick note before we get out of here that's not about media days. Of course, there were 5 different Ole Miss Rebels drafted in the Major League Baseball draft today. Of course, Derek Diamond, the first Rebel off the board, he went to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Hayden Dunhurst went to Kansas City. Dylan DeLucia to Cleveland. Brandon Johnson to Kansas City. And Tim Elko to the Chicago White Sox. And those are all the Rebels off the board so far. No word on as far as you don't know whether or not a couple of them would choose to come back in the end. Dunhurst seemed to indicate not too long ago this evening that he has made his decision that he is going to go forward with his draft position. As he tweeted out another thank you, Ole Miss, from his Twitter account. So he seems to be on his way out, at least for on his end, for sure. As far as the recruits are concerned, Ferris and Anthony, they are no chance. They come to Oxford with the money. They just got first and second round draft picks there with a multi-million-dollar values from their picks. We'll do, or I'll do at least, I'm hoping, a more in-depth show for you all on the draft at some point in the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that. Evie, again, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got a lot of work to do, so it was awesome getting to talk to you about media days for a little while, and we'll let you get back to it. But it was a lot of fun, and I hope you have a great rest of your time down in Atlanta.
Thanks, Austin, and I look forward to us kicking off football season before you know it.
Before you know it. It's so exciting. I can't wait for it to get here. Well, until then, guys, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks again to Evie. Thanks again to Lee McPherson of Remax of Orange Beach for sponsoring this show. She's been great all through Omaha and now jumping on board with Media Days. We are so appreciative of her. Again, check her out at leemcpherson.com, Remax of Orange Beach. Have a great night, everybody. Hotty toddy, and we'll talk to you next time.
Hotty toddy.